Welcome back, my friends. Today, we are going to listen to the powerful story of how the Mongol Empire conquered much of the known world. This is not only the story of horses, warriors, arrows, and battles. It is the story of how people from the open grasslands of Central Asia built one of the largest empires in history. At first, many great kingdoms did not take them seriously. They lived far from the rich cities of China, Persia, Europe, and the Middle East. They did not build giant stone temples like Egypt. They did not build marble cities like Rome. They did not seem like the kind of people who would change world history forever. But they did. The story began on the Mongolian steppe. The steppe was a huge open land of grass, wind, cold winters, dry summers, and endless sky. Life there was very different from life in large farming civilizations. People did not usually live in permanent cities. Many lived as nomads, moving from place to place with their animals. They depended on horses, sheep, goats, cattle, and camels. Their homes could be moved. Their world was not made of city walls, but of open space. The sound of life on the steppe was the sound of hooves on hard ground, wind moving across grass, animals calling in the distance, and riders traveling under a wide sky. This environment shaped the Mongols. Life on the steppe was difficult. The weather could be cruel. Food could be uncertain. Rival groups competed for animals, land, marriage alliances, and survival. A family had to be strong, practical, and ready to move. Children learned to ride horses when they were very young. They learned to shoot arrows. They learned to understand distance, weather, animals, and danger. A person who lived on the steppe could not be weak for long. The land itself trained people to be tough. Horses were central to Mongol life. A horse was not only transportation, it was survival. It allowed people to move quickly, hunt, herd animals, escape enemies, and fight in war. Mongol riders became some of the best horsemen in history because riding was part of daily life. They did not learn it as a special skill later. They grew up with it. A skilled rider could shoot arrows while moving, turn quickly, disappear across the land, and travel long distances with amazing speed. This gave the Mongols a natural military advantage before many of their enemies understood it. But before the Mongols became a world power, they were divided. The steppe was full of tribes and clans. These groups often fought each other. Alliances formed and broke. Leaders rose and fell. Loyalty was important, but betrayal was also common. In this world, a boy was born who would later be known as Genghis Khan. His original name was Temujin. He did not begin life as a rich prince ruling over a united people. His early life was full of danger, loss, and struggle. That difficult beginning would shape the kind of leader he became. Temujin's childhood was harsh. His father was a tribal leader. But after his father died, Temujin's family lost protection. Other people abandoned them. Imagine a young boy suddenly facing hunger, cold, and danger with his mother and siblings. There was no strong kingdom to protect him. There was no easy road forward. The family had to survive by gathering food, fishing, and living with very little. This experience taught Temujin one of the hardest lessons of steppe life. Power can disappear quickly, and survival depends on loyalty, courage, and intelligence. As he grew older, Temujin learned how dangerous divided tribal life could be. He saw betrayal. He saw revenge. He saw how families could be destroyed by politics and violence. But he also learned how to build relationships. He formed alliances. He chose followers carefully. He rewarded loyalty. He understood that if the steppe tribes stayed divided, they would keep fighting each other forever. But if they were united under one strong system, they could become something the world had never seen before. This was one of Temujin's greatest achievements. He did not only win battles, he changed the rules of power on the steppe. Instead of relying only on old family ties, he promoted people based on ability and loyalty. A person did not always need to come from a noble family to rise if he was brave, skilled, and loyal. He could be rewarded. This made Temujin different from many traditional leaders. It also helped him build a stronger army and a stronger political system. Slowly, Temujin defeated rivals and united more tribes under his leadership. This was not easy. It took years of fighting, negotiation, and strategy. But step by step, he became the most powerful leader on the Mongolian steppe. In the early 13th century, he received the title Genghis Khan, often understood as a universal ruler or great ruler. From that moment, the Mongols were no longer only scattered tribes fighting each other. They had a leader, a system, and a shared direction. The world beyond the steppe did not yet understand what this meant. Powerful cities, kingdoms, and empires looked at the Mongols and saw nomads. They saw riders from the grasslands. They did not fully see the discipline, speed, intelligence, and organization that were growing behind them. This was a serious mistake. The Mongols were about to become one of the most dangerous military forces in history. This is the first lesson from the Mongol Empire. Great power does not always rise from rich cities or old kingdoms. Sometimes it rises from difficult land, hard lives, and people who learn to move faster, endure more, and adapt better than their enemies. The Mongols came from the steppe, a place many outsiders underestimated, but that same place gave them the skills that would shock the world. The small tribes of the steppe had been united. Genghis Khan had created something new, and soon the riders of Mongolia would move beyond their homeland, crossing deserts, mountains, rivers, and borders. The world was about to hear the sound of Mongol horses. Before he became Genghis Khan, the man who shook kingdoms across Asia and Europe was a boy named Temujin. His early life was not filled with comfort, safety, or royal power. It was shaped by hunger, danger, family struggle, and betrayal. This is important because the Mongol Empire did not begin with a prince sitting safely inside a palace. It began with a child on the steppe, learning that life could change in a single day. On the open grasslands, protection mattered. A strong family, a strong clan, and strong allies could mean survival. Without them, a person could quickly become weak, hungry, and forgotten. Temujin's father was a respected leader, but when Temujin was still young, his father died. After that, everything changed. His family lost its position. People who had once followed his father no longer wanted to support the widow and her children. They abandoned them on the steppe. Imagine that moment. A mother left with children, little protection, and few resources. The wind moves across the grass. The sky is wide, but it gives no shelter. The family must search for food, gather roots, catch fish, and survive with almost nothing. For Temujin, childhood became a school of hardship. This experience taught him a lesson that would stay with him forever. Loyalty was precious. But it could not be assumed. People might follow a leader when he was strong, then disappear when he was weak. Temujin learned not to trust empty promises. He learned to judge people by actions. Later, when he became powerful, he rewarded loyalty strongly and punished betrayal harshly. His empire would be built not only on fear, but on a clear system of loyalty, service, and reward. The pain of his youth helped shape the rules of his future. As Temujin grew older, he lived in a world where tribal politics were dangerous. The steppe was not peaceful. Clans fought over animals, women, land, revenge, and honor. Alliances could be formed through marriage or friendship, but they could also break quickly. A leader had to be brave, but bravery alone was not enough. He needed patience, strategy, and the ability to understand people. Temujin began to build relationships carefully. He made allies when he could. He learned when to fight and when to wait. He understood that survival on the steppe required both strength and intelligence. One of the most important parts of Temujin's rise was his ability to bring people together beyond old tribal lines. In many societies, power belonged mostly to noble families. Birth was everything. If a person came from the wrong family, it was hard to rise. Temujin began to change this. He valued ability, courage, and loyalty. A man who served well could be promoted. A man who fought bravely could gain honor. A man from a lower background could become important if he proved himself. This made many warriors loyal to Temujin because he gave them a chance that older systems did not always give. This was a powerful idea. It helped Temujin build a new kind of army and society. Instead of depending only on family connections, he built loyalty around shared purpose. Warriors who followed him could expect rewards from victory. They could gain animals, land, protection, and status. But they also had to follow discipline. Temujin did not want a loose group of raiders who only chased personal gain. He wanted an organized force that could move as one body, step by step. Temujin defeated rival leaders. Some battles were direct and violent. Others were won through alliances, negotiation, or careful timing. He knew that the tribes of the steppe could not become powerful if they kept destroying each other. They needed unity, but unity did not come easily. Many leaders did not want to give up independence. Many families remembered old insults and old blood feuds. The steppe carried long memories. Temujin had to break old divisions and create a new identity. When he finally united the Mongol tribes, it was a turning point in world history. The people who had once fought each other now had a common leader. Their energy could be directed outward. Their riding skills, hunting skills, and fighting skills could be organized into a disciplined military machine. The steppe had always produced strong warriors, but Genghis Khan gave them structure. He turned scattered strength into concentrated power. He also used a military organization based on units that could be controlled clearly. Warriors were grouped into tens, hundreds, thousands, and larger units. This system made command easier. It also mixed people from different tribes, which reduced old tribal loyalty and increased loyalty to the new Mongol order. A warrior was no longer only part of his small clan. He was part of something larger. He was part of the Mongol force under Genghis Khan. This unity gave the Mongols speed and discipline. They could move quickly across long distances. They could communicate through signals and messengers. They could pretend to retreat, then suddenly attack. They could surround enemies, strike from different directions, and use fear as a weapon. But before they could do any of this against great empires, they first had to stop fighting each other. That was Genghis Khan's great first victory. This is the second lesson from the Mongol Empire. A leader does not become powerful only by winning battles. He becomes powerful by turning divided people into one force. Temujin's childhood taught him pain. His rise taught him strategy. His leadership taught the tribes that unity could make them stronger than any single clan. Once the Mongols were united, the world outside the steppe was no longer safe from them. The boy who had once been abandoned on the grasslands had become Genghis Khan, and now he was ready to lead his riders beyond Mongolia. The Mongol Empire became powerful because its army moved faster than almost anyone expected. Many kingdoms had soldiers, walls, cities, and heavy weapons. They believed strength came from size, armor, and fortifications. But the Mongols brought a different kind of power. Their strength came from speed, discipline, communication, and the horse. They did not fight like many of their enemies. They did not always stand in one place and wait for battle. They moved like the wind across the open land. They appeared suddenly, attacked quickly, disappeared, and returned before the enemy could fully understand what was happening. The horse was the heart of the Mongol army. Every warrior could ride extremely well, because riding was part of life from childhood. A Mongol soldier was not learning horse skills only for war. He had grown up herding animals, hunting, traveling, and surviving on horseback. This made Mongol cavalry very different from armies that trained soldiers later in life. For the Mongols, the horse felt almost like part of the body. They could ride for long hours, change direction quickly, and shoot arrows while moving at speed. Imagine a line of riders crossing the steppe, dust rising behind them, bows in their hands, horses breathing hard, and the sound of hooves beating against the ground like distant thunder. Mongol warriors also used the composite bow, a powerful weapon made from materials such as wood, hone, and sinew. It was small enough to use on horseback, but strong enough to strike with deadly force. A rider could shoot while moving forward, sideways, or even backward. This gave the Mongols a huge advantage. They could attack from a distance, avoid close combat when needed, and weaken enemies before the main battle began. Many armies were used to fighting soldiers who stood in formations. The Mongols forced them to fight against movement. One of their most famous tactics was the false retreat. The Mongols would attack, then pretend to run away. Their enemies, believing they had won, would chase them. But this was a trap. As the enemy formation stretched out and became disorganized, the Mongols would turn, surround them, and attack from different sides. This tactic required discipline. A real retreat can easily become panic, but the Mongols could make retreat look natural while still staying under control. This confused enemies who did not understand their methods. Communication was another reason the Mongol army was so effective. A fast army is useless if it cannot coordinate. The Mongols used signals, flags, drums, messengers, and organized command structures to control movement across large distances. Their units were divided clearly, so commanders knew who was responsible for which group. This made the army flexible. It could separate into smaller forces, travel across wide areas, then come together again for a major attack to enemies watching from the ground. It could feel as if the Mongols were everywhere at once. Genghis Khan also understood intelligence gathering. Before attacking a region, the Mongols often collected information They wanted to know roads, rivers, cities, leaders, weaknesses, and rivalries. They used scouts and spies. They studied their enemies. They did not only depend on courage, they depended on knowledge. This made their attacks more dangerous. A kingdom might see Mongol riders arrive and think they were only wild warriors from the steppe, but behind the attack was planning. The Mongols were also skilled at psychological warfare. Fear became one of their weapons. If a city surrendered, it might be spared and brought into the Mongol system. If a city resisted strongly, the punishment could be terrifying. News of destruction traveled quickly. Some cities surrendered before a major battle because they feared what would happen if they refused. This was brutal, but it was also strategic. The Mongols understood that fear could make future conquests easier. One destroyed city could make the next city open its gates. Still, the Mongol army was not only a group of horse archers. As the empire expanded, the Mongols learned from the people they conquered. They used engineers from China, Persia, and other regions. They learned siege warfare, which was necessary when attacking walled cities. At first, steppe warriors were strongest in open battle. But great civilizations often protected themselves behind walls. The Mongols adapted. They used catapults, siege towers, tunnels, and other methods. This ability to learn made them even more dangerous. They were not frozen in one tradition. They took useful knowledge wherever they found it. This is one reason the Mongols defeated enemies who seemed much richer and more advanced. Many settled civilizations underestimated nomads. They saw them as outsiders without great cities or written traditions like their own. But the Mongols had a different kind of intelligence. They knew movement, endurance, animal care, distance, strategy, and survival. When they added siege technology and administrative skill to their steppe strengths, they became a force few could stop. Their military success also depended on discipline. Genghis Khan created rules for his warriors. Looting, movement, rewards, and punishment were controlled. Warriors were expected to obey commanders. Cowardice, betrayal, and breaking orders could be punished severely. This discipline helped turn the Mongol army from a loose collection of riders into an organized machine. Each warrior had personal skill, but the army's real power came when thousands of skilled riders moved together with one purpose. This is the third lesson from the Mongol Empire. Speed alone is not enough. Courage alone is not enough. The Mongols became powerful because they combined speed with discipline, communication, intelligence, and adaptation. They could move faster than their enemies, learn from them, frighten them, and strike where they were weakest. The world had seen warriors before, but it had rarely seen an army like this. Soon, this army would move beyond the steppe and into the great cities of Asia and the Middle East. Kingdoms that believed their walls would protect them were about to face a new kind of war. After Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes and built a powerful army, the Mongols began to move beyond the steppe. What followed shocked the world. Cities, kingdoms, and empires that had stood for generations suddenly faced riders who moved faster than expected, attacked with terrifying discipline, and adapted to almost every enemy they met. The Mongols did not conquer only one region. They spread across Asia, into the Middle East, and toward Europe. Their empire became one of the largest land empires in history. One of the first major targets was northern China. The lands there were rich, organized, and protected by cities and walls. To many people, it might have seemed impossible for nomadic riders from the steppe to defeat such powerful states. But the Mongols were not only fast horsemen, they were also patient learners. When they faced walled cities, they learned siege warfare. They used engineers, captured specialists, and new machines. They studied the weaknesses of their enemies. They attacked supply lines. They used fear, pressure, and negotiation. If a city surrendered, it might survive. If it resisted, the result could be terrible. As the Mongols moved into China, they encountered wealth, bureaucracy, skilled craftsmen, and advanced technology. Instead of ignoring these things, they used them. This was one of the secrets of Mongol success. They did not only destroy, they also absorbed engineers, doctors, scribes, translators, administrators, and artisans could be taken into Mongol service. Useful knowledge became part of the empire. In this way, every conquest could make the next conquest easier. Then the Mongols turned west. One of the most dramatic campaigns came against the Khwarezmian Empire, a powerful state in Central Asia and Persia. The conflict began after a diplomatic crisis, when Mongol envoys and merchants were mistreated and killed. For Genghis Khan, this was not only an insult, it was a reason for war. The Mongol response was devastating. Cities across the region faced attacks. Some were destroyed. Populations suffered greatly. The campaign showed the world that the Mongols could strike far from their homeland and bring down rich, settled empires. The conquest of Central Asia opened the road to the Islamic world and beyond. Great cities that had been centers of trade, learning, and culture suddenly became part of the Mongol storm. The sound of Mongol horses reached places that had once felt distant from the steppe. Merchants, scholars, rulers, and ordinary families heard stories of cities falling and armies disappearing. Some stories were exaggerated by fear, but fear itself became part of Mongol power. The name of the Mongols traveled faster than their armies. After Genghis Khan died, the empire did not stop. His sons and grandsons continued the expansion. The Mongol world was divided among different branches of the ruling family. But for a time, the shared system remained strong. Mongol armies pushed deeper into Russia and Eastern Europe. They defeated powerful armies and shocked European rulers who had little understanding of this new enemy. The Mongols crossed rivers, forests, and plains. They attacked with speed and coordination. Their victories in places like Russia, Poland, and Hungary showed that European knights and armies were not prepared for their style of war. For people in Europe, the Mongols seemed almost unreal. They came from far away. Their movement was fast. Their tactics were unfamiliar. Their reputation was frightening. Churches, towns, and courts heard reports of destruction. Some people feared that no Christian kingdom could stop them. The Mongol advance into Europe might have gone even farther. But political events within the Mongol world changed the situation. When a great Khan died, leaders often had to return for succession politics. This helped stop the advance into Central Europe, at least for that time. In the Middle East, later, Mongol campaigns changed history again. In 1258, Baghdad, one of the greatest cities of the Islamic world, was captured by Mongol forces under Hulagu Khan. Baghdad had been a center of learning, culture, religion, and political authority. Its fall was a terrible shock. Libraries, buildings, and communities suffered enormous destruction. The event became a symbol of how deeply the Mongol conquests could change the world. A city that had once felt like the heart of civilization could fall But the Mongols were not unstoppable forever. In 1260, Mongol forces were defeated by the Mamluks at the Battle of Ain Jalut. This battle was important because it showed that Mongol expansion could be stopped. The Mamluks, based in Egypt, used strong cavalry, discipline, and local strategy to defeat a Mongol army. The victory helped protect Egypt and parts of the Islamic world from further Mongol control. It also proved that the Mongol military system, though powerful, was not invincible. At the same time, the Mongols built more than war. Their empire helped connect East and West. Under Mongol rule, trade routes across Eurasia became more active and, in some periods, safer for merchants, goods, ideas, technology, religions, and diseases moved across long distances. This period is sometimes connected with the idea of the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol peace. It did not mean the empire was gentle or peaceful everywhere. It means that Mongol control over huge routes helped create new connections between regions that had once been more separated. This connection changed world history. Travelers, marchands, and messengers could move across the empire. Chinese inventions, Persian knowledge, Islamic science, European curiosity, and Central Asian trade networks touched one another in new ways. The Mongol Empire was terrifying in conquest, but it also became a bridge across continents. This is one reason its legacy is complex. It brought destruction to many cities, but it also opened routes of exchange. This is the fourth lesson from the Mongol Empire. Conquest can destroy, but it can also connect. The Mongols changed the world because they broke old borders and forced distant civilizations to meet. Their armies brought fear, but their empire also moved people, goods, ideas, and knowledge across Eurasia. By the time their expansion slowed, the world was no longer the same. The steppe riders had created an empire that reached from East Asia toward Europe, and their shadow would remain for centuries. The Mongol Empire became one of the largest land empires in history, but it did not stay united forever. Like many great empires, it became too large, too complex, and too difficult to control from one center. The same speed that helped the Mongols conquer also created a problem. Their empire stretched across huge distances, from East Asia to the Middle East, from the steppe to Russia and parts of Europe. Rivers, deserts, mountains, languages, religions, and local traditions separated the lands under Mongol rule. Winning territory was one challenge. Keeping it together was another. After Genghis Khan died, his family continued the empire. His sons and grandsons expanded Mongol power even farther. But the empire depended heavily on the unity of the ruling family. When strong leaders worked together, the Mongol world could function. When they competed, the empire became unstable. Succession was a serious problem. Different branches of the family wanted power, land, and influence. A new great Khan could not always control every distant ruler. Slowly, the empire began to divide into separate khanates. These khanates were ruled by Mongol leaders, but they developed in different ways. In China, Kublai Khan founded the Yuan dynasty. He ruled as emperor and connected Mongol power with Chinese administration. In Central Asia, another branch controlled the Chagatai Khanate. In Persia and the Middle East, the Ilkhanate ruled over a rich Islamic region. In Russia and the Western steppe, the Golden Horde became powerful. These states shared Mongol roots, but they were not the same. Each one faced different people, different religions, different economies, and different political problems. Over time, local cultures influenced the Mongol rulers. This is very important. The Mongols conquered many lands, but they were also changed by the lands they conquered. In China, Mongol rulers had to deal with Chinese officials, farmers, cities, taxes, and traditions. In Persia, many Mongols became connected with Islamic culture. In Russia, Mongol rule affected local princes, tribute systems, and political development. The Mongols did not remain only steppe warriors. In many places, they became rulers of settled societies. This made their empire more sophisticated, but it also made the different parts less united. Another problem was distance. Messages could travel quickly for the time, but not instantly. A decision made in one region might take weeks or months to affect another region. Local rulers had to make their own choices. If they became strong enough, they could act independently. The empire's size, once a sign of greatness, became a weakness. The larger it became, the harder it was to govern. Economic and social pressure also played a role. War could bring wealth, but constant war also damaged cities, farms, and populations. Some regions needed rebuilding after conquest. Trade routes could bring money, but they also required security. Taxes had to be collected. Officials had to be trusted. Local people had to accept Mongol rule, or at least fear it enough not to rebel. Managing an empire required more than military skill. It required administration, compromise, and stability. The Mongol military advantage also became weaker over time. Their enemies learned from them. Other armies adapted to Mongol tactics. Fortifications improved. Political alliances changed. The Mongols were still powerful, but they were no longer a complete surprise. Once the world understood their speed, their bows, their false retreats, and their use of fear, it became easier to prepare against them. No military advantage lasts forever. Disease may also have helped change the world that Mongol rule connected. Trade routes across Eurasia became busier, and people, animals, goods, and ideas moved across long distances. But diseases could move too. The Black Death later spread across parts of Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and North Africa, causing terrible loss of life. The Mongol Empire did not create disease by itself, but the connected world it helped build made movement faster and wider. This is one of history's difficult lessons. Connection can bring trade, knowledge, and wealth, but it can also bring danger. Still, the Mongol legacy was not only destruction. Their empire changed the map of the world. It connected East and West in new ways. Merchants, diplomats, travelers, and missionaries moved across routes that linked China, Central Asia, Persia, Russia, and Europe. Ideas and technologies traveled. Trade became more active in many areas. The world became more connected than before. In this way, the Mongol Empire helped prepare the ground for later global exchange. The Mongols also changed the history of many regions. In China, the Yuan dynasty became an important chapter in Chinese history. In Russia, Mongol rule influenced politics, tribute, and the rise of later powers. In the Islamic world, the fall of Baghdad marked a deep turning point. In Central Asia, Mongol and Turkic traditions mixed and shaped future states. Even after the empire broke apart, its influence remained in political systems, military traditions, trade routes, and cultural memory. Genghis Khan himself became one of the most debated figures in history. To some, he was a brilliant leader who united the tribes, rewarded ability, created order, and connected continents. To others, he was a conqueror whose campaigns caused enormous destruction and suffering. Both views are part of the story. History is often complicated. A person can build and destroy at the same time. An empire can create order in one place and devastation in another. This is the final lesson from the Mongol Empire. Power can rise from places the world ignores. It can move with incredible speed. It can break old borders and change history forever. But even the greatest empire cannot escape distance, rivalry, adaptation, and time. The Mongols conquered more land than almost anyone imagined possible. Yet their empire still divided, changed, and faded as a united force. Today, the sound of Mongol horses is gone, but the memory remains. We remember the open steppe, the riders under the endless sky, the rise of Temujin, the army that moved faster than its enemies, the cities that fell, the roads that opened, and the empire that connected continents. The Mongol story teaches us that history is not only made in palaces and cities. Sometimes it begins in harsh lands, among people who learn to survive, move, adapt, and dream beyond the horizon. Thank you for listening to this story. Now, write one simple sentence in the comments. You can write, I learned that the Mongol Empire became powerful because of unity, speed, discipline, and adaptation. Keep listening, keep learning, and I will see you in the next story.